is in Psalms 121. And I just want to read the first two verses of that. And then maybe I'll read some more if you're up for it. It says, I will lift my eyes to the mountains. From where shall my help come from? My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. And when I first was reading that, I thought, I lift my eyes to the hills. And then you start looking and you remember, well, this psalm was something that the people would sing on their voyage to the temple, right? To Jerusalem. Wasn't it yearly, I think? They would go to Jerusalem. And there's another psalm that says, as the mountains surround Jerusalem, so the Lord surrounds his people, right? So there were mountains. They had to climb mountains to get to the house of God, right? That's where Jerusalem was. That's where the presence of the Lord lives. So I started thinking, okay, so my help is in the presence of Jesus, right? It's where he dwells, and that's not in a building anymore. We are that, right? So then I started reading this one, Psalms 84. It says, how lovely are your dwelling places, right? So now I'm a temple, right? We are the temple. O Lord of hosts, my soul longed and even yearned for the courts of the Lord. My heart and my flesh sing for joy to the living God. The bird also has found a house, and the swallow a nest for herself, where she may lay her young. This is he's my home, right? Where he lives, that's where I dwell. He's my home. I look to where his presence is. I look to my time where I commune with him, because in him and in the flow of him is my life, right? It's my home. It's my dwelling place. It's where I'm safe, right? That's what it just said. Then it says, even your altars, O Lord of hosts, my King and my God, how blessed are those who dwell in your house. They are ever praising you. Father, I pray that would be spoken of us. That we are a people that are ever praising you. Our house is secure because our house is in you. How blessed is the man whose strength is in you, in whose heart are the highways to Zion. My heart, your heart, our hearts. Highways. I think of highways and I'm like, well, I don't know, maybe they're talking about highways, but I'm thinking I go fast on the highway. I have a lead foot, my husband tells me. I can connect to him and all of heaven in an instant because of my heart is the highway to Zion, right? There's one more psalm I was in that I won't read, but it says about how when the congregation is together in the temple, where the Lord is, where his presence is, right? Now that's us. It draws the nations to Jerusalem. It says Ethiopia came with their arms out like this. I think it's Psalm 68. With their arms stretched out to the living God. Father, we look to you. Holy Spirit, You're so close. We look to you. Jesus, God, you dwell here. You are where our strength comes from. You are our home. And you are the hope of nations. We will praise you. In all things, in all times, whether at the bottom of the mountain looking up or the top of the mountain looking down, we will be a people that ever praises you because you're good and you're faithful and you're the God of the whole earth, the God that created the heavens and the earth. We have a special place in your heart. May our hearts be highways to Zion, to the presence of God.
Wonderful, so wonderful is your unfailing love. Your cross has spoken mercy over me. No eye has seen, no ear has heard, no heart can fully know how glorious, how beautiful you are. soul must sing, beautiful one. My soul must sing. Oh, my soul must sing. My soul must sing, beautiful one. Do it again, my soul. My soul must sing. My soul must sing. My soul must sing, beautiful one. Beautiful one I love, beautiful one I adore, beautiful one my soul must sing. Beautiful one I love, beautiful one I adore, beautiful one my soul must sing. Oh, my soul must sing, beautiful one. Oh, my soul must sing. Oh, my soul must sing. My soul must sing, beautiful one. You open my eyes to your wonders anew. You capture my heart with this love. There's nothing on earth is as beautiful as you. You open my eyes to your wonders anew. You capture my heart with this love. 'Cause nothing on earth is as beautiful as you.
Soul sings, my soul all throughout my history. Your faithfulness has walked beside me. The winter storms make way for spring. In every season, from where I'm standing, I see the evidence of your goodness all over my life, all over my life. I see your promises and fulfillment all over my life, all over my life. Help me remember when I'm weak. Fear may come, but fear will leave. You lead my heart to victory. You are my strength, and you always will be. I see the evidence of your goodness all over my life, all over my life. I see your promises and fulfillment all over my life, all over my. Sing that again. I see the evidence. I see the evidence of your goodness all over my life, all over my life. I see your promises and fulfillment all over my life, all over my life. I see the cross, the empty grave, evidences endless. All my sin rolled away because of you, oh Jesus. See the cross, the empty grave, the evidence is endless. All my sin rolled away because of you, oh Jesus. I see the evidence of your goodness all over my life, all over my life. I see the promises and fulfillment all over my life, all over my life. I see the evidence of your goodness all over my life, all over my life. I see your promises and fulfillment all over my life, all over my life. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, we thank you. Oh, we thank you. You are good. You are faithful. You are good. Always faithful. So why should I feel when the evidence is here? Why should Thank you, Lord. Ending. I see the cross, the empty grave, the evidence is endless. All my sin rolled away because of you, oh Jesus. I see the cross, the empty grave, the evidence is endless. All my sin rolled away because of you, oh Jesus. I see the cross, the empty grave, the evidence is endless. All my sin rolled away because of you, oh Jesus. I see the evidence of your goodness all over my life, all over my life. Thank you, Jesus, we thank you. I see the promises and fulfillments all over my life, all over my life. I see the evidence of your goodness all over my life, all over my life. I see your promises and fulfillment all over my life, all over my life, all over my life, all over my life, all over my life. Just pour out your thankfulness. Remind your soul, remind your soul. Your Father is good all the time, every day, every moment. Remind your soul. You're never alone. Your Father is good every day, every moment. It's here, it's here, it's here. of it all, worthy of it all. You are worthy of it all. Every last drop, every last drop. For from you are all things, and to you are all things, and you deserve the glory, all of the glory, all of the glory. You are worthy of it all, every last bit, every last bit. You are worthy of it all, every last drop. Oh, from you are all things, and to you are all things. You deserve glory. Yeah, you deserve it all, deserve it all. Oh, endless praise that comes from my lips. It goes out of my soul, it pours out of my soul. I will bless you with every breath, with everything within me. You deserve it all, you deserve it all. Yeah. With every breath in my lungs, every beat of my heart, every step that I take, every move that I make, I pour it out, a living sacrifice, 'cause you deserve it all, you deserve it all. Everything I am, everything I have is from you. I give it back to you, you deserve it all. You are worthy of it all. Yeah, yeah. You are worthy of it all. Yeah. And from you are all things, and to you are all things, and you deserve into your Father's plan. So I won't give up, I won't look back, I will keep going into my Father's heart. You didn't give up, you never looked back, you kept on going in the face of pain. So we won't give up and we won't turn back, we'll keep going, we'll keep going. You didn't give up, you never turned back, you just kept loving, you just kept going. We won't give up, we won't go back, we'll just keep going, just keep loving. You didn't give up and you didn't look back, you just kept going, you just kept loving. I won't give up, I won't go back, I'll just keep going, I will just keep loving. You didn't give up, you never turned back, you just stood in your Father's heart. We will stand, we will stand. We won't give up, we won't turn back, we will just keep standing, just keep going. We won't give up, we won't give up. Is anyone with me? Yeah. We won't give up, we won't turn back. We won't grow hard, we will forgive, just like you did, time and time again. We won't grow hard, we choose to forgive, just like you did, just like you did, time and time again. Time and time again. We won't grow hard, we won't get bitter, we keep on loving just like you did. We choose to forgive. We choose to love, we choose to love just like you did. So take our heart into your hands, mold me. Here I am. We won't give up. We keep on going, we keep on loving. You can take the coal, you can burn my lips, purify my heart. You can take the coal and burn my lips, fire all the way through. You could take my heart all the way through, all the way through the fire, all the way through the fire. And won't be scared, I won't turn back. You could take the coal, you can burn my lips. You could take my heart all the way. I won't turn back, I choose to forgive, just like you did. Just like you did. Just like you did.
So, I just want to share because I feel like exactly what we're singing is my testimony this week. I didn't know that I had become somewhat hard in my heart. Things have been changing around me. And it was so weird because a week or two ago, the Lord used my neighbor who doesn't even know him. He doesn't even know if he believes there's a God. And he was sitting on my porch. And the kindness of God came out of him in a way that stopped me in my tracks. And I've been undone for 2 weeks because I realized how kind he is. And that I had missed that. I had missed simple kindness. And I had to repent. And I started thinking this morning, here we are around the throne, and on the throne it says there's these creatures that have eyes within and eyes without. And I saw that some of my eyes weren't looking at him. I had some eyes there and some eyes somewhere else. And this beautiful kindness washes all my eyes. Wash our eyes, Father. We want one eyes for you. Eyes within and eyes without, surrounding your throne, beholding you, because you're so kind. Your love is so good, so pure. It's worth all of me. It's worth all my eyes. Soften our hearts. Soften my heart to love again, to kindness again. Blind us with your kindness again, God. Jesus, how we love you. Thank you for chasing after me with goodness and mercy for all the days of my life.
Can we just pause here for a moment after that and practice what Jocelyn just confessed to the Lord? I was over there as Jen was singing, and I just asked him to help us fix our eyes on Jesus. That song says everything came from him and everything's going back to him. And in the middle, it's probably really healthy for all of it to rely upon him. And so God, right now in this moment, before we move on to anything, would you help us practice training our eyes on Jesus? If you have to, let your imagination just picture what he looks like. It's okay. The imagination is like, I believe it's the doorway into the Spirit. I think that's the way God designed humans. So imagine what he looks like. And for all of us, it can be different depending on each one of us. But imagine what the Lord looks like and look at him. Just look at him. It says, as we behold this image, Paul tells us that we're actually transformed into the very image we look at. So I just want to look at the Lord. Because I can't think of a better person I want to look like. If I was made in his image, it's a good idea to keep looking at him so that my inward parts match how he designed me. Couldn't help but start looking around the room then and seeing all of you and seeing the Lord. Believe it or not, you're beautiful. Even you, Billy, you're beautiful. And I see the Lord in you. Would you just take a second, just go look at somebody and tell them, say, you're pretty, you're beautiful. Go ahead, just go greet somebody. Would you do that before we keep going? Say hello, even if you've never met him before. It's helpful if you get up to do that. It's really hard to go see somebody sitting down, Steve. Go somewhere else. You go tell him at home.
Okay, it is time to give. So if you came prepared to give in person, come on up. If you give online, don't forget to sow your seed of giving. So go ahead and bring that up. Father, we bless every seed sown right here to this house and to your heart here.
Hello. Good morning. Koinonia is this weekend. Whoop whoop. Kids registration is still, well, you can still bring your kids if you did not register them. If you can just let Jocelyn know. If you have not registered on our app, we have a registration, and yeah, on our app. Use our app. And if you have any questions, it starts Thursday evening. We're going to be having worship at the Pence house. You should get an email at the bonfire worship night. You would get an email with the address, and then we'll have sessions Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday morning. So if you have questions on where to register, what it's about, anything, can come talk to us after church. Cool?
So looking forward to Koinonia. I hope you can come. Kids, we're going to go out this door over here for our classes. And Ben Delgado is going to be sharing with us today. Like, you know, clap for him or something.
Good morning.
He's amazing.
Okay. Oh, actually, I'm so sad you did that.
Why? You don't want it?
I don't want it today. I'm so sorry. Does anybody mind if I don't use a pulpit? Like, is that a problem? In fact, can I just do this way differently than I ever would do it? We got this. All right. This is not part of my sermon. I just simply want to sit down today. Is that okay? Is that okay with you? All right. I will take you up on that offer. I had two impressions that I wanted to share just during worship. That's not part of anything that I was thinking about today, but you know, when Jen was talking about forgiveness, or just never turning back and continually to forgive, that's kind of hard, right? Like, that's hard. And I just brought to you remember when Peter was like, hey, Jesus, how many times do I have to forgive somebody before I'm like cool to give up? You remember that story? And Peter's like 7 times? Is 7 times good? Right? And like, I like that. Like, that Peter's like me in that situation, because I'm like, Give me the minimal amount of time and effort that I need to put into this thing before you just like kind of let me off the hook. And I thought it was, well, first of all, Peter walked into a trap. Anytime you ask a question like that to Jesus, you're walking into like this holy trap where he's going to be like, let me raise the standard for you here. And he says, no, actually 70 times 7. Which is still kind of weird because it gets you a number, right? Like I'm like, oh, okay, cool, 449 times. I'll just do it continually until I'm done, right? But I don't think Jesus was trying to give a number. Like he wasn't trying to give a number. Because Jesus sees all things, and he's looking at things from the spiritual and the kingdom perspective. Do you know what does 7 represent in the Bible? It's a holy number. It represents completeness. So really what Jesus was saying is, you need to forgive people until it's complete. And then when you think it's complete, you may have to go 10 times more than completeness. So take your completeness, what you think is complete, and times it by 10, and that gives it 70, and now times that by 7. So take completeness and times it by 10 times of completeness, and that's how many times you need to forgive until it's complete. And more complete than you ever can think it could be complete. So I got this impression like, man, we turn back on forgiveness so many times. We never get to completeness. We just get to comfortable. I feel comfortable in this situation. I forgave you. I never have to deal with you. But that's not what Jesus was saying. Jesus was an all the way through complete man. That was the first impression I had. The second impression I had was on the word worthy. When we sing, you are worthy of it all. I think what happens in our mind is we stop and like, you are worthy of this praise, right? So this is a really good thing, and you're worthy of it, so I'm going to give you this really good thing, right? You're worthy of my praise. But really, the song says you're worthy of it all. And the word worthy simply means, if I can remember this correctly, that the abilities are able to carry the thing presented. You're worthy of this. So your abilities and what you've accomplished are actually able to carry this thing that's presented. And I can't think of anything more worthy that Jesus has shown that he can carry than your hurt and your pain. But we never think about that when we say, are you worthy of it all? We're just thinking, you're worthy of my praise. And I never say, you know what, Lord, you're worthy of this pain. For me to actually hand it over to you and let's sacrifice it at the altar. You're worthy of that. So we have to have a lot of, and I guess the tying string is the word complete. We have to have a way more complete perspective of who God is. And that he's not just worthy of your praise, but he's worthy of your pain and your anger. That sounds counterintuitive, right? It's not like what we've always been told, like, God's not worthy of your anger. You better not bring that to God, right? But he actually is able to carry it in such a way, in such a graceful way, that he can turn your anger into something beautiful. So those two impressions I had during worship, and I just wanted to share that with you. Nothing to do with what I talked about. You want to know something? I actually don't really know what I want to talk to you about. Well, I do, but like, I don't have it all planned out. Like, I don't have all my notes here. That's why I like pulpit over there. I was considering doing this last week because it was the anniversary of 9/11. But I was like, what does it matter what date I tell you this story? But I want to give you just what I went through on 9/11. But I'll just give you a little bit of a background. I've spent 2,350 Sundays in church. It's basically all, like every Sunday of my life in church. I grew up in church. That's Sundays. That's not the Wednesdays that my parents dragged me to, like to go to Royal Rangers. I used to go to Royal Rangers. See, he loves it. I love it. Like, anybody else go to Royal Rangers? Like, we went to Royal Rangers to tie knots, And I'm like, I live in New York City. I don't know why this knot is ever going to come. Hey, let's start a fire. And I'm like, it's illegal to start a fire in the city. And I'm like, why am I here? What am I doing? We should be learning like how to navigate the subway or something like that. Like, why don't we learn that? But yeah, I spent a lot of time in church. I find this to be the weirdest part of church. I find this to be the strangest part of church, where it's like we come here and you all sit in a position that just randomly makes you have to listen to me for some reason. And like, I've never met you, and you're like, oh, all of a sudden I got to listen to this person because I walked into this church and he's up front, so I got to listen to him, I guess. And you're like, I don't know if I want to listen to him. Like, I have no idea. So I find this to be the weirdest exchange. And we do it every Sunday, and I'm just wondering, I'm like, man, I'm not sure if this is really what was meant to be church, right? Like this, continually I come to Sunday, I listen to like one of three guys preach, people preach or speak, and I go home and like I agree with them because they were up there, right? Like, I think about in Revelation where it says, they overcame the enemy by what? Oh, you skipped one part. We have to acknowledge that is the blood of the Lamb. We overcame the enemy with the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. The word of our testimony. So that's why I find this exchange kind of weird, because it's like it's only one guy, but it's actually the word of our testimony that overcomes the enemy. And I don't want you to think of the enemy as in like a person. I want you to think of the enemy as something way bigger than that. It's the thoughts in your mind that prevent you from seeing God for who he truly is. That's your enemy. It's not that person across the street. It's not that person in the other religion that doesn't think the same way of you. It's not that person who votes differently than you. None of those things are your enemy. Your enemy is way closer and way more in here than out there. Because I don't know how many times I have commiserated with my enemy who has allowed me to then project an enemy out there. I'm commiserating with the enemy. Oh, you are a sinner. Yeah, you sin. Yeah, okay, you're a sinner. But like in my mind now, I am commiserating with this idea that you're not a son of God because I've labeled you a sinner, and now I'm commiserating with my enemy. My enemy's telling me that person's against you. That's your enemy. And God's like, that's my son. That's my daughter. That can't be your enemy. So they overcame the enemy, these thoughts that are preventing you from seeing who God truly is and how he actually operates and how much he loves. They overcame him with the blood of the Lamb, who was worthy to be slain. Like the only lamb that was actually worthy of that mantle, like the only person in the history of history to ever, like, you know what, you're worthy to die for all of the sins of all of the earth. That's a heavy mantle. And the word of our, so I think this looks way more like me hearing your testimony. And Mark was talking about economy, like over the last 3 times we've met, which are 2 Sundays and a Wednesday. This is the economy of heaven, is that we exchange testimony, and testimony results in abundance. We exchange testimony. And all testimony is, it's the story of the goodness of the Lamb. That's all it is. Testimony is us talking about that first thing that overcame the enemy, the blood of the Lamb. And we have a continued conversation about the goodness of the blood of the Lamb. And now we have everlasting economy. It's not money, but it's riches, and it's wealth, and it's abundance. So I think more times than not, if I'm up here, I'm kind of trying to share with you a principle, right? You have to get this principle. You have to understand this principle of the kingdom of God. And if you understand this principle, you're going to get it. And honestly, like, I've said more, like the last 3 times, it's actually the stories that are connected to the principles that are way more impactful. Way more impactful. These are the testimonies of our life. So I want to give you the testimony of what I experienced on 9/11. All right? I was born and raised in New York City. All right? I spent the first 30 years of my life in New York City. I love New York City. I know I've told you this before, but I'm going to tell you again. I love New York. Like, I'm a New Yorker. I walk around in Chambersburg. I don't understand Chambersburg people. You'll drive too slow. You'll walk too slow. Get out of the way. That's just my attitude. That's my New York attitude. And it's not anything personal, right? It's not a personal thing that you're in the way. You just happen to be in the way that I'm going, right? So it's not like you personally are in the way. It's just like you and my way, and I have to get here, and my wife wants me to get refried beans for dinner tonight. That's what I got to do. Boom, boom, out. And if you're in the way, you're in the way. So it's not a personal thing, all right? If you go to New York City, you'll actually find that New Yorkers are really, really helpful. They'll tell you where to go in more ways than one. Like, that's a good joke. I'm glad you got that. That's a good joke. That's a solid joke. If you're too young, I'm sorry. But no, but New Yorkers are actually really, really helpful. Like, they don't have a lot of time to help, but if you ask for help, they're helping you, right? Like, hey, show me where the 59th Street Bridge is. Every New Yorker is going to tell you, like, what train to take. New Yorkers are helpful, super helpful. You know what's not helpful? Tourists. Tourists are usually not helpful in New York City. Why? Because they're in the way. Like, that's just how New Yorkers are. Like, that's how we act. So I apologize if all that upbringing hasn't rubbed off on me yet. Like, I don't think it ever will, but that upbringing of just like, we move fast and we have a thing that we have to do, and we go do that thing and we get out of there and we go. Like, you want to know something funny? I've never spent a New Year's Eve in Times Square. Why would I? I'm a New Yorker. Like, I would never do that, right? I've been to the Statue of Liberty like once. Like, it's like right there. You know, like, this is the kind of things that happen when you're a New Yorker, right, Chris? We went to the Statue of Liberty because the school told us we had to go to the Statue of Liberty, and they said, you're going to walk these 7,000 flights up, and you're going to look through a window this big, and you're only allowed to look through it for 4 seconds, and then you got to walk down. And you're like, what am I doing? I'm never doing this again. Like, this is not. So anyway, on 9/11, before that, I spent 5 years working in the World Trade Center, like the original World Trade Center towers. I spent 5 years of my life. So I can actually, right now, if I close my eyes, I know on the South Tower was my entrance tower. Like, that's where I did most of my business. And the reason why I worked there is I worked for a custom and international trade law firm, right? And all of the customs work was in the World Trade Center, right? I mean, it's called the World Trade Center, right? So the law firm that I worked with, like, it was like basically at the foot of the World Trade Center. Like, you cast a shadow and the World Trade Center was right there. And with my eyes right now, I can actually walk the corridors of the World Trade Center because I've memorized everything that I would have to do. I know I have to go to this bank, and I have to do the banking for the law firm. And then I know if I walked like 500 feet and took a left, I was going to go to the customs filing office, right? And the customs filing office is where, when we had something tied up in customs because it didn't go through the right thing, you know, we had to file all these lawsuits and stuff like that. And I would go there, and then I would walk through, like, the World Trade Center had every single type of store that you can think of. And I would walk through those stores, and sometimes I would shop while I was working. Sorry, but I did. And I would hang out in the World Trade Center. I stopped. There was an amazing salad place. Like, I used to go to the salad place. I loved it. And these people knew me, and they knew the salad that I liked, right? Like, you would think in a city where it's so many people, like, they would be like, you're just another person, but you get to know people. New York is a lot smaller than you think in your communities. It's actually broken up in communities like this. And I would walk and I would get a salad, and then I would get out on the North Tower, right? And I would walk down the North Tower and up to 50 Center Street, all right? And 50 Center Street is where all the courts were. So any other filings for courts that we had to do, I did there. And it was kind of cool. Did anybody watch Law and Order? Did you ever watch Law and Order? Yeah, the set of Law and Order, I would have to navigate around the set of Law and Order to get to the courts that I had to get to, like 500 Pearl Street and all these things that you would see, like the facade of, like that was my area, right? City Hall and all these places, St. Paul's Church, like all the Trinity Church. Trinity Church is the first church in New York. The first church in America, in the United States. It's Trinity Church, right at the base of the World Trade Center. Really interesting stuff in New York City. If I remember correctly, Alexander Hamilton was buried there, if I'm remembering correctly. But that's where I worked. 5 years working in the World Trade Center. And I loved it. I love downtown New York. I love the energy of walking. And the thing I love about cities is that there is an energy to cities. There's like this walking pace, and there's this, there's just this community of people that you really don't ever talk to. Like there's a community of people who go on the train together. We know how to get on the train together. We look forward, we mind our business, and this is our community. We don't talk, and we're all hanging out, and we get to the place, and you get out of the way of this is the community of New York. You know what one of the funniest things I would find when I was walking in the World Trade Center, I have had to do this multiple times, is that people would, in order to get their favorite picture of the World Trade Center, would lie on the ground, right? And they would try to take a picture of the World Trade Center. So because I was like, yeah, that 4 feet was really going to make the difference on your picture. And you don't know how many times in a doorway, I had to walk over somebody, and now they probably have a picture of the bottom of my shoe because and I was the rude one. I'm like, you're lying in front of the doorway, But I love that area. It was just a really cool area. And I did that all through college. I worked full time and I went to school full time. I used to take an 8 o'clock class, an 8 o'clock college course, or actually 2 courses, a 7 o'clock course and an 8 o'clock course. And then I would go to work and work a full day, and then I would take a couple night classes, right? I could only take 16 credits a year because I was working full time. So it took me a lot longer to graduate college, right? Oh, and I wasn't really a great student either. I'll admit that, but it took me a little bit longer. So I worked down in the World Trade Center for 5 years. 5 years, and it was great. But when I graduated college, it was time to get like a real job, I guess a real job, right? And at that point, right before 9/11, I got a job a little bit uptown, not even half a mile uptown, right? At a not a law firm, a publishing company called Penguin Putnam. So if you ever get your Penguin Classics, they print all these. I mean, if you're in school and they make you read these books that you don't want to read, that's the company that I work for. And I'm the guy who printed all the books of the stories you didn't want to read. That was me. I apologize. But I hope you enjoyed Wuthering Heights. I'd never read it, but it's boring. Anyway, about 6 to 8 months before I had moved up to that job, and I remember the morning of 9/11. I'd taken the train into work like I always do. I had my headphones in, and I was participating in my subway community of not talking to anybody and not looking at anybody, right? And just minding my own business, which is the way of the city. And I got out at my stop, and you could feel like there was a little bit of a commotion, right? But I couldn't really tell anything that was going on because the way of the city. I was out of the subway, my ears are filled with music, and I'm walking to my job. But then when I got out, the subway was here in the corner, and then when you got in a clearing of an avenue, I look up and I see there's smoke coming out of the World Trade Center, black smoke, and I'm like, whoa, something's going on. So I go up to my office, and we're really close. We're really close to the World Trade Center, but I go up to my office and I'm sitting there watching as smoke is billowing out of the World Trade Center, spilling out, and you're starting to finally get news. You're starting to finally somebody came up to, I don't remember, like this commotion, so like a plane flew into the World Trade Center, right? And I'm sitting there like, what the heck? Was it like a prop plane? Like, was it like, because that was more feasible at that time, right? There's no information coming out like oh, a prop plane, like somebody was flying and lost control and flew into the World Trade Center. And we find out that, it's like, I don't remember what type of, but a passenger plane, right? I don't remember the designation of aircraft that it was. But you find out that it is a plane. Do you want to know what my thought was? Anybody want to guess what my thought happened? I didn't think somebody accidentally flew into the World Trade Center. I actually thought the rapture happened. I thought the rapture, this is when I had these thoughts in these ways. I thought that the rapture happened, and obviously the pilot was a born-again Christian, and obviously, like, this is so dumb when I'm saying it out loud. This is a really safe place for me to say this dumb thing. But obviously, he was a Christian, and the plane flew into the World Trade Center. And then I was sitting there, and I was like, but wait, if the rapture happened, I'm here. And I'm like, oh, man, I knew I shouldn't have done that yesterday. Like, that was my thinking. Like, I was like, oh, my God. But then I was like, no, that can't, no. I know that all these people would stay here and I would be raptured, right? Like, I knew that, right? I figured that out. But I seriously thought, oh my God, the rapture happened. It's kind of a ridiculous thought. Not kind of, but. So I remember sitting there in our office, and the weird thing is, think of an office and, like, think of that entire wall as windows, right? Is that facing south? Yes? All right. So that's facing south. We're facing south, and that's so window of office windows that you can see the World Trade Center. It's right there, like it's right there. And while I'm standing there and I'm watching, all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I see this speck that seems to be moving pretty quickly. Like, it's moving quickly, and I could actually see it make a turn and kind of dip and then come back into my vision. And I see it's moving, if I'm looking south here, it's like moving left to right. And it disappears into the smoke of the North Tower. The North Tower was hit first, right? Anyway. It moves behind that building, and it disappears, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, and I know you've probably seen the video, but you know that big red ball of fire that came out? That is what I saw. And it was going out this way, but obviously it was going out this way, and I remember it throwing me back. I remember, like, the force of it in just the experience. Like, I didn't, like, I could feel the heat because it was so hot, but the force of that experience threw me back to the point where I was like, oh my God, like, we're under attack. Like, something is happening here that I don't understand. And I will never forget what that looked like in my head. I never forget that. So I see this thing. I see basically what looks like a missile, like in a plane that flies into this building, and this huge explosion. And now in the building, like, there's all just chaos. Like, people are running around and yelling and worried, and we can't call anybody. And the building managers are telling us, do not leave the building. Nobody is allowed to leave the building. I mean, we're watching things fly into buildings, and we're like, I'll tell you, and this is like, I don't know what this reveals, but I still have dreams today of planes that crash, like, into build. Like, I still have those dreams. They don't impact me to the point where I'm like debilitated, but I still have those dreams, right? And just from seeing that. And one of the most surreal things is, was anybody else in New York City at that time? Oh, Chris watching it from a classroom, right? Like, the weirdest thing is, I know most people here probably watched it on TV, but I watched it. There was a TV in the office that we were listening to for commentary, and I would look at that TV, and I would just look up, and there it was. Like, the actual Trade Center was burning. It was burning. And we're watching this thing, and it's starting to really get hard to actually to know what certain things are because the smoke is so black and it's so big and so large, right? Like you can't really tell what anything is. But it was also just this contrast of it being so bright and sunny that day. It was like just really bright and sunny. It was like a beautiful day. I actually went to work because we could in flip-flops that day, and you didn't know how a terrible decision that was going to be, having flip-flops on like these little, anyway. And I remember we're just watching the World Trade Center. And I distinctly remember, and I don't want to be too graphic with this, but I distinctly remember what looked like debris falling from the building, but it looked like debris because it was in light, and when it got into shadow, you can tell what it actually was. And that was hard. You could tell, like, you know what? I really appreciated Christians during that time because it became this, like, talking point that, and I heard Christians say this, and I was like, well, you know what? If you committed suicide and you were going to hell. And I was like, this is the Jesus we're talking about here? I am so convinced that anybody who was jumping out of a window on 9/11 was jumping into the arms of Jesus because that's the only thing that they could possibly do. And anytime you're choosing life, even if it's the slimmest opportunity of life, but I remember seeing that. I mean, it wasn't, so many, but I remember seeing that. It was a horrifying thing to see and to think about, that somebody has to make that choice. But you want to know something? There are people who feel like that and are making choices like that every single day, and they are afraid to come into churches because they're afraid of the judgments that we will have for the decisions that they've made when they're in their reality are making decisions between a burning building and jumping out of a window. Like really hard decisions. Really, really hard ones. So they don't really need to come in here and get judged on those things. They actually, what they need here is to come and see that there is life and that there's availability to life. And every that decision that you made, regardless of how tough it is and regardless of how it looks to me, here there's an opportunity for life. That I don't have to sit here and judge your decision, especially when I have no clue what the conditions of that decision-making process was. No idea. And even though I saw people fall from the buildings, I have no idea what was in their head and what was in their heart at the time they had to make a choice that I would never have to make or never want to make. Can I give you a little sidetrack here? 9/11 is also a reason why you will never see me criticize a leader or president on social media, ever. Ever. Because I remember this conversation about the plane that crashed here. And the conversation was, well, was that plane really taken over and brought down, or was it shot down by the military? Do you remember this conversation? Like, do you remember this controversy? Like, people were talking like it was either one thing or it was this. This is why I will never criticize a president. I don't know if I have the capacity to sit in a room and have to make a decision that hard. Could you imagine having to sit in a room and somebody tells you there is a plane and it is flying and it is moving towards 10,000 people, you may have to make a decision to shoot it down. And you're like, what do I do with the lives of 200 people or 2,000 people? I've never been in a room to make that kind of decision. So I am not going to criticize the men or women who decide to take on that. Now, let me not say criticize, let me just say dishonor. That's a better word. I'm not interested in dishonoring people who will take on those decision-making processes. It doesn't mean that I agree with everything they do. It does not mean that. But I can sit here and honor them for deciding to take that on, and I can actually not agree. I think that's a beautiful thing. Anyway, so I'm not sure how long it took, but I think it was like an hour to a 45-minute time when the first tower fell, which was this, in my mind, it took 10 minutes to fall. Like in my mind. I know it was just like a 30-second process of the buildings just falling. But in my mind, I remember seeing this building falling. And like this building that I spent 5 years of my life in, it was crumbling away in such a slow motion pace that I was like, I couldn't believe what was happening. Still, we were told that we couldn't leave the building. We had to wait. So we sat there and watched. The only thing that we could do was sit there and watch. We would constantly try to call our loved ones, but you couldn't get through. You could not get through. Like it was just busy signals, or it was like you would just hang up, or you would pick up a phone and there was nothing there. Like we didn't have, I had a cell phone. It wasn't working. I tried landlines. I tried everything. I couldn't contact anyone. So we sat there and waited, and then the second tower fell. Same kind of experience. And you're sitting there and you're like, oh my God, they're not there anymore. Like, they're not there anymore. It was just a strange, weird experience. Now, at that point, you couldn't keep us in the buildings. Like, nobody was going to be able to keep you in the building. After the second tower fell, nobody knew what was going on. They had shut down New York City. There was no enter and no exit of New York City. You were there, all right? You couldn't walk south. You didn't want to walk south. Luckily, we were a little bit north of the towers, and the wind, if I remember correctly, was moving west to east. So all that smoke was going out towards the Brooklyn areas and that. So my department, a group of like 10, 12 people, we decided, well, we need to start making our way north. And I lived in Queens, so that's north of, okay, so here's a New York City travel tip for when you want to be on the trains, okay? If you're in Manhattan and you're going south, all right, you're going towards Brooklyn. If you're going north, you're going towards the Bronx, okay? If you're going north and then east, you're heading over to Queens, okay? So that's how you know how to navigate New York City. So northeast is Queens. So I needed to get to the northeast part of New York City in Queens. I lived in Astoria, Queens. Astoria, Queens is a kind of a weird... Astoria, Queens is basically like the largest Greek city in the world. Like almost literally like next to Athens, Astoria is where you get gyros and souvlaki and, like best Greek food that gyros? You said gyros all my life. So, like, this is where I lived. But also there was a major Muslim section in Astoria also, just outside in that area. And they had a very different experience of what 9/11, and it wasn't celebratory like we're told. Like their experience was like, I don't speak, but their experience was this gut-wrenching, oh my God, what is my life in America going to look like right now? Because I'm Muslim and I'm brown. Like, I had Muslim friends in college who would go back and forth between Christianity and Muslim, and after that time, our conversation was more like, I don't know how to really interact with people. I remember getting on the train. Well, I'll get to that in a minute. But so we walked north. So I had to walk all the way from the bottom of Manhattan, very close to the bottom of Manhattan, all the way up to the 59th Street Bridge, right? So we're talking about good 60 blocks of New York City, right? And then over, 7 avenues, right? To get to where I need to go. And we walked in, if you ever watch like the old movie, like an old, Exodus. If you ever watch Exodus, did anybody watch Exodus here? I'm dating myself. You watched Exodus and you saw, that scene where like you see all the people of Israel and they're walking, they're marching, right? And that's what New York City looked like. But with these paths where fire trucks would part us, kind of like the Red Sea. I had a friend named Paul Gill, who was a fireman. Paul Gill, we played on the same basketball team. Like, we played these pickup basketball tournaments that we lost like every game, but we just like enjoyed playing basketball. I realized that height is an advantage when it comes to basketball. Like, look at me. You think I'm scoring? Like, come on. But we had fun, and Paul was on one of our teams, but he was a firefighter, and he died in 9/11, rushing into buildings. I was always on it. Like, Paul is. We had just played in a tournament not too long ago, and you know what? The third member of our team actually only had one leg, so that yeah. Arturo was my best friend growing up. He had one leg, and our basketball team was guys who were no taller than 5'8", and one of them had a prosthetic leg. And it wasn't even it wasn't even top of the line. And he would limp like this. He would not even be mad right now if I made fun of him. And I think he probably was the best out of all of us. He probably was the best. He's a great shooter. So Paul was in one of the engines units that went into a building. I don't know if there's anything more like Jesus. Like, talk about marching into hell and freeing people. Whew, that's Jesus to me. Like, Jesus marched into hell and freed you. The hell that you're in right now, the hell that you're experiencing, the hell that you allow yourself to experience, he marches in and he says, I'm going to free you. And he died doing it. It's a beautiful picture of who Jesus is in people who would sacrifice. What better love than this? What better love than this? And these men were marching in for friends they never knew. So anyway, we marched up, and this is why I'll always love New Yorkers. This is why I'll always love New Yorkers. We're in a professional environment except me wearing flip-flops. And you know what? There was actually stores. There was a Modell's. Do you know Modell's Sporting Goods? Does anybody know Modell's Sporting Goods? There was a Modell's Sporting Good that was downtown. And they were handing out sneakers, like handing out sneakers to women that were wearing high heels. They're just like, here, take these sneakers and I know you have a long. Every single restaurant was open to give water. Every single one. So if you stopped at a restaurant, if you're walking in New York City, and it was hot that day, and you're walking in New York City, there was a restaurant open, and they were giving you water. Like, while you saw the dichotomy of what humanity looked like in people who had it in them to kill themselves for their stance, but then you had people on the ground who had it in them not to run away, but to give you whatever support you needed on your journey. Yeah, here's sneakers, here's water, here's food, here's this. Come in here, sit down. Be like New Yorkers. This is how New Yorkers are. Like, New Yorkers are tough time people. You see really we're kind in a way that you usually don't want kindness. We're kind in tough times. Like hard kindness. Because there's what we usually feel comfortable is the general kindness that we expect. Oh, that person's kind. They're nice. They don't honk at me. And they don't. But New Yorkers are like, you need food. Or you need, and that's what I experienced. I experienced beautiful humanity too. And it was not only seeing the faces of firefighters running past us or in engines driving by us and seeing their faces and being like, that could be the last time. We weren't thinking in that way, but that could be the last time. But people helping each other. So we walked, and I remember you weren't allowed to leave New York City, right? But until about, I don't even remember the time, but it was afternoon. Like, by the time we walked all of the city, I didn't want to say it was 4 or 5 in the afternoon. I don't know, maybe somebody remembers that better than me, but I mean, only Jen would remember. Jen were you in Long Island at that time? Yeah. We weren't even married yet. We were dating. Right? I didn't know if we were engaged or if we were dating. So I'm walking all New York City, and we finally get the clearance that you can evacuate out of New York City. And there was only 2 ways to evacuate out of New York City. You could go, they started opening up trains to take people out of the city, or you could walk over the bridges. And I remember saying, there is no way I'm getting in a train. There is no way. Because I want to at least be able to see what's around me. Like, I want to be able to have that kind of control. But we had a group of 12 of us, and some people, the only way they can get, they weren't even close to a bridge. So we would walk them to the train station that would take them to their place. And we wouldn't leave anybody in our group until they got to the place that they could actually depart to their home, right? So we're walking into this group of 12, and we drop somebody, and we're like, okay, you're good. Well, this is as far as we can go with you. And we would let them go. And I remember I was the last one because I was going the most north. And I got up to 61st Street or something like that, and I turned left. I started making. I could see the vast, like, the sea of people who are walking over the 59th Street Bridge. We just start walking. Everybody is just. I'll tell you. Really, there was no black or white then. There was no, like, Republican. There was no Democrat at that point. It was just like, we're walking. And we're walking together. And we walk, and I finally, like, I remember getting, the church that we went to was 5 blocks away from the entrance of the 59th Street Bridge. So I walked to the church, and there people are still handing out water. The church was open, and they're handing out water. And I remember my legs at that point were so tired that I just collapsed, and I was done. I was done. The things that I saw that day and what I experienced, I was just completely exhausted. And I remember we couldn't go to work. We weren't allowed back into the city for the next, until that Friday. I wasn't allowed to go back into work. And even then, when I was allowed to go back to work, you could only take the train so far, right? Like, you could only go 14th Street, and then you had to walk all the way down to work. And a lot of people just didn't come back for a couple of weeks. I remember one of the graces of God was it rained on that Friday. And it rained pretty heavy, which actually allowed the smoke to kind of settle and get heavy, because there was work going on. I know I'm going a little long, but there's a couple more things I want to say, because I want to tie this to something. I remember recognizing some of my own prejudices that really were birthed in trauma that didn't really have any truth. Because I remember for the longest time getting on trains, and if a Muslim person came on the train, automatically having a prejudice. Automatically. Like, I would be at attention. I would be watching them. They could be with kids. It didn't matter. And it took me the longest time to start breaking through that type of prejudice. And trauma will do that to you, right? And I don't really use the word trauma that much in my life. But that type of event will do that to you, and it's something that we have to guard against. You have to guard against it. The funeral the next 2 months were funerals. Like, it was just funerals, and we had to wait. We had to wait until it was the turn of our friend to have a funeral. And I remember, I just remember his funeral. That church that we went to was completely packed. And I was an usher, and I was in my suit. And, Mayor Giuliani came up to me and shook my hand and walked into the church. He's pretty short. I remember thinking that. I was like, hey, I'm as tall as the mayor. Maybe I could be mayor too one day. It was, I forgot. There were no planes flying over 9/11 after that time. but fighter jets. And I remember the most comforting sound. You could hear fighter jets flying over New York City for the rest of the day. And they would go back and forth. And I remember being really grateful for the men and women that were sitting in that cockpit, because I was walking over a bridge and I could look up and I will see a fighter jet go by, right? Like a couple of them would fly, and they would fly back, and they would go to the tip of New York, right? They would turn around and they would fly back, and they would go back and forth. So you would see them like maybe every 7 minutes. So you're walking. Could you imagine the comfort of hearing like a fighter jet flying over, and you're like, whew, keep flying. Like, keep flying. And you're just walking over this bridge and back and forth. And you're just like, thank you. Thank you, Lord, for that type of protection. So we had funerals, and Paul's funeral was a very stately thing. There were fire engines, and there was a Scottish bagpipe group there. Like, you could hear Amazing Grace from the bagpipes, like, for blocks for Paul. And then you're supposed to go back to life as you knew it. But life as we know it, it changed, right? It changed a lot. It changed a lot. And I remember, do you all remember, like, how many people remember when George W. Bush went down? He was down at the site. Does anybody remember this? He was down at the site, right? And he's talking through a bullhorn. He's talking through a bullhorn, and he's talking to all these volunteer workers and all these like firefighters who had survived. And basically, what these men are doing, well, men and women, is they're picking up pieces of the World Trade Center like by hand, or by whatever they can, and they're trying to find like their brothers. And they're looking, and the president comes down there, and he's talking in the bullhorn. Do you remember when somebody screamed out? Do you remember what somebody screamed out? He's like, "We can't hear you." And George Bush said, "But I can hear you, and the whole world will hear you." And every single New Yorker was like, "Yeah, go get him, George. Like, you need to," and we're all unified at this time. But, and this is everything that I'm driving towards. Beware of counterfeit unity. Because any unity built on hatred or built on a pain will ultimately lead you down a road that will never bring you reconciliation. Ever. So at one point, if we're unified, we just have a common enemy. At some point when that enemy is gone, or when we think that, you know what, we're not unified anymore, but you know what? We've actually built something on hatred, and then we walk away, and what do we have? We have hatred. That's what we have. So for a brief time, the United States, and if you look at our history, we mark a lot of things by conflict and war. A lot of things. We have Cold War kids and Gulf War kids and 9/11 kids, and a lot of our perspectives are shaped by these conflicts that we've had, especially like living in the United States. And I don't think God ever meant for us to be marking or to be framing up our understanding of the world through these conflicts. So here we are, we're unified, and we're unified. I remember, like, we just had like black and white people actually just had a different, like we were cool to hate just another person. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, now it's okay for us together to hate Muslims. How did that turn out over these years? Honestly, how has it turned out? We didn't deal with the things in the past, but now we have a new thing to get angry and hate and have a bunch of hatred about. So we unify for this one, and it's counterfeit. And once that thing goes away, then we turn back and, oh, I remember I hate you. And that's not how we were meant. If we're not unifying around the love of Jesus, then the unity that we have will show itself to be counterfeit. It'll show itself to be counterfeit because those things, none of those things can be everlasting. And only Jesus can be everlasting. Now, here's the deal. I'm gonna end like in 2 minutes. While 9/11 was this huge day in my life, I have way more 9/12s than I have 9/11s. Does that make sense? Because 9/12 turned into 9/13 and 9/14 and 9/15, and you know what? And unfortunately, some people didn't have 9/12s. So your life is way more shaped by what you do with 9/12 than the event that happened to you on 9/11. Does that make sense to you? See, you could stay in 9/11 and you can live in that place for the rest of your life. Whatever trauma that you have, it happened and it was your 9/11. And if you decide to continually live your 9/11, you're never going to get to 9/12. You'll never get to 9/12. And your life is actually measured more by what you do with the 9/12s than what happened on 9/11. And that is the freedom that Jesus died for. In this idea that, look, you want to know something? We got to go through the thing. The thing is going to happen, all right? There's going to be stuff that happens in your life, and some of it is going to really stink. But do I consider the pain and the trial of today to be worthy of consideration in comparison to the glory that is to be revealed? That's Romans 8, paraphrased. So I go through this event. And you want to know something? There are some hard things that people have gone through. And I'm telling you, you can have a 9/12. You can have a 9/12. And it covers everything. And everything is some really hard stuff. Everything. So you can be a victim. It can happen to you. You could be victimized. Ladies, sometimes I look at it and I say, hey, you know what? You can get over it. But there is actual hope in a 9/12. You don't have to, and I say that to ladies because there's a lot of things that women will go through that, or have gone through, that I'll never experience, especially when it comes to how men have treated women. Right? Like, we have to acknowledge that. But there's actually a possibility. There's actually a hope for 9/12. There is a hope for 9/12. So I tell you this story. I tell you my story because I'm fully cognizant and understanding of the impact that this time, that moment, that event had in my life. But I will never honor or glorify it in a way that it supersedes the work that Jesus is doing in my life to bring glory to himself. And this is where we get stuck in so many times, where we continue to glorify the event, or we continue to glorify the pain. And when we continue to glorify the pain, Jesus is just, he honors you in that and says, well, if that is this is going to be a hard word. If that is the idol you choose to worship, then the power that you get is the power from that idol, which is basically nothing. It's destruction. So while, you know what? I would never wish, I hope this, we've gone through some hard things. I wish that the hard things that we've gone through over the last 2 years, I would wish them away. But more, I wish we could actually get over to the point of true unity that's not based on these constructs that we have that are counterfeit. And we only do that by individually saying, you know what? It's time to step into 9/12. It's time to step into 9/12. It's not a never forget thing. It's a let's move forward. And freedom is forward. Freedom is always forward. And it's available. So I want to pray for you. Stand. I appreciate you listening to my story and not like, I am not interested in preaching today. I just wanted to tell you that story. Because it's what I've lived through in my life. But I want to pray over you. I don't like, it's not that I don't want to pray over your 9/11, whatever that was. But I'm actually way more interested in your 9/12. Way more interested in your 9/12. So, Father, there have been events, there have been traumas, and there have been hurts, and there have been pains, and there have been so many things that from an event have shaped our worldview. For everybody in this room, everybody in this room has something that has shaped how they're looking at themselves, at you, Lord, at other people. And some of us have made them idols, and some of us have glorified them. I know I have. And none of them compare to the hope and the love and the possibilities that exist when we choose to step in to our 9/12. And that's you, Jesus. And while you're walking with us and side by side with us through those hurts and those traumas, you're also opened arms inviting us to walk into what the next step of wholeness is. What life and abundant life and beauty look like. Father, I pray that we never settle for counterfeit unity. But Father, I pray that as we step into wholeness and healing and love that presents itself in your name, Jesus, that we become unified over an everlasting, over a eternal, over a faithful, loving Father. So I pray over this group blessings into your 9/12, into wholeness. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. I pray, really. Oh, I want you to be like really liberal with your testimony. Like be really liberal with that, like, hey, I want to share this with you. I have enough in my back pocket. Here's my testimony. Throw it out there. I'm sure there's going to be enough. Because you know what? There's a new glory that's happening. Like there's another testimony coming. I know it. There's another. He's that good. All right? So if you want to do anything this week, be like totally liberal with sharing your testimony. And not trying to preach to people, but just trying to tell people what the goodness of the Lamb is. All right? That's the thing to do this week. Be really liberal with it. And see what happens. And I love you. And have a great week. We done. That's what he said. We done. That's the best way to end it.